Food and Wine Insider is a weekly look at a $1.5 trillion industry touching every American. Visit us at foodandwineinsider.com.
And as part of our ongoing series of conversations with chefs, we have today Sean Dutson. And without a word from me, I want to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Don, and welcome, Chef, to the show. Just by way of introduction, Chef Sean Dutson is of the Rebels Guild in Revere, Massachusetts. Welcome, Chef, to Food and Wine Insider.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
I want to start with, I noticed you have an undergraduate degree in psychology and then went to culinary school at Johnson & Wales. Talk a little bit about that connection. How are they related? It's
a little bit of a strange path, right? Well, the interesting thing about that is that, I got my undergraduate degree in psychology and mostly got into that field of interest because I was interested in people and what makes people tick and that kind of thing. And I think that if you look at food, when we as professional chefs and anybody who's cooking is one of those things that really is a personal connection to people. So I see them related that way in that you're producing food to please people, and my interest in psychology was about kind of getting to understand people better and understand what makes people tick. There's often a joke around the kitchen a little bit that talks about, truthfully, a lot of times when you're dealing with large teams of people, and you spend a lot of time talking to individual staff members, things like that, knowing how to talk to people and how to approach people seems to be a real asset. Something that's helped me out over the years in being able to connect with my team.
Terrific. And so what inspired you to pursue a career in food?
It was a bit of an accident, to be honest with you. I had always cooked as a kid, and I enjoyed doing it, but I never considered it as a career. I wanted to be a military pilot. That was my ambition in life, and then I came up short with my vision, and so that didn't work out. Then I went into psychology and realized that wasn't for me. And by happenstance, I ended up taking a job mostly for just to pay my rent. In a restaurant that, by dumb luck, was run by a master chef and a French guy that really gave me some inspiration and got me focused on it, and realized that I could make a career out of this, and it was something I really loved doing. It didn't seem like work to me; it seemed like an opportunity to exercise a passion that I had, and it came to me fairly late in life. I think I had already been out of school, and I was in my 20s, and so I decided to pack up and go to culinary school, and that's where I really got into it. And it's been quite a ride ever since.
So was that master chef the one who influenced you the most? And if so, what was his advice?
Yeah, his name was Paul Elbing. He was a great guy, an Alsatian master chef, and to say that he taught me how to cook is the most accurate way to say that. He certainly inspired me at the very ground level of everything. He got me going, and he taught me what it was to really truly cook professionally. But then I had a couple of other guys that I ran into over the years that really, really inspired me. I worked for a guy named Bob Burke in Providence, who taught me about the business of restaurants and about people, and how a chef it needs to connect with the customers they're serving. You can't just hide in the back and produce food. This is a social thing, and something that you need to learn how to talk to people and go out and get feedback from folks and run the business as if people were coming to your home. And then I also worked for another gentleman named Ralph Conti, who was a really fantastic chef that taught me about the true passion of taste for foods. Ralph he had an Italian restaurant in Providence that we went to the James Beard House twice with him, and he really just got me to understand that simple flavors and simple foods were really the best way to go, to really develop flavors that Mother Nature put there. And I think that's been my mantra for ever since I worked with him. I really think that truly clean and pure flavors are the way to go. And that's I'd say that those three guys are probably the biggest inspiration in my career.
And in very different areas, so it really gave you almost inspiration on several different pieces. Whether it was about cooking itself or the business of the restaurant and relationships, the importance of relationships, and certainly the trend is so much towards the clean flavors and just making it natural and making it
Right.
just about the palate. You've had a lot of interesting experiences since you graduated from school, and you actually went to some big institutions like Marriott and Hilton first. Talk a little bit about why that direction initially.
Well, it again a bit of a happenstance type of thing. I went to Marriott at the Mystic Marriott in Connecticut, not because it was a Marriott, but I went there because of a friend who had a friend who was the general manager. I had another chef friend that I worked with. He knew the general manager, and the owners of that particular property were very, very determined to have a destination restaurant, and they wanted a chef who was an independent independent-minded chef, I suppose is the right way to say it. But that got me into hotels. I was hired to do that because of my independent restaurant background and because I was very passionate about the restaurant business. Once I got into hotels, I found that I really enjoyed working in hotels because there was a whole bunch of dynamic going on in the hotel. It was a much bigger canvas to work in than a single restaurant. There was a whole banquet department, there was room service, there was employee dining. There was a whole bunch of opportunities for somebody who was a chef to expand your mind and your experience to touch a lot of different facets of the business. Plus, it was a part of my life where I was really starting to mature into understanding the business and knowing what it means to make money doing what I love to do. And that was, the hotel world was a perfect place for me to do that. And the Marriotts that I worked at, I opened up 3 different Marriotts. One was in Mystic, as I said. One of them was in Hartford, and then one was at the Renaissance in Boston. And all 3 of those properties had destination and have destination restaurants. They were restaurants that weren't meant strictly for the hotel guests. They were meant for the general population to come and enjoy food at. So I know that they were all my experience in hotels have been unique experiences that way, because oftentimes hotels don't have restaurants that are particularly noteworthy, but all the ones that I worked at did. And so that has been a great kind of a hybrid for me.
Wonderful. And you're now at Rebel's Guild, which is a revolutionary themed restaurant. And I don't mean like revolutionary as I mean like in Revolutionary
like
War.
Like in 1776.
1776 themed restaurant. It's in the Revere Hotel, which interestingly I think opened on the date of the midnight ride of Paul Revere.
Yeah, I won't say that didn't happen by accident, right?
No, sounds right to me. Talk about why this particular restaurant opportunity interested you.
Well, that would be a bit backwards in that I was the executive chef of the hotel and had been for about a year before the restaurant concept came in line. I came to the hotel wanting to be able to do something fresh and something new, and this hotel is an independent hotel. It doesn't have the branding that the Hiltons or the Marriotts do. But what it did was it allowed me to do more of my own thing. And it gave me a lot of freedom that way. It really is a fabulous hotel that is fun and it's energized. And with the one piece that we were missing was to have a really great restaurant. And the restaurant that we had a nightclub here, but through the transformation and the rebranding of the hotel, the nightclub went away, and we given birth to Rebels Guild, and when I say given birth, anybody who's opened up a restaurant will know that that's that's what it feels like. It is something that is painful and long, and it's difficult, it's challenging, but once it's there and once it's launched and you have put your heart and soul into something, it's your baby, and you really feel very passionate about it, and that's how I feel about Rebels Guild. At Rebels Guild, I was given, the people that own the hotel and the people that I work for with Pyramid, they've given me an enormous amount of opportunity to influence the concept of this restaurant and to develop the menu entirely and to do the wine list entirely. And it's just been a fabulous experience for me to be able to express where I am in food now and to connect with our customers and to be part of every bit of the restaurant.
Yeah. I'm going to come back to Rebels Guild because I really want to know a lot about your challenges and whatnot. But I thought I would ask you, and I sort of debated about asking you this question, but I'm sure, all chefs have heard about the loss of Anthony Bourdain. And I was curious, what did his life and approach to food and the stories he told kind of mean to you?
Well, it's funny. And I guess I guess everybody thinks their own world is unique, right? But since Anthony died, I think that what I've seen out there in the media has made me feel like maybe I wasn't wired differently, but there was a lot of folks out there who were in the same position I was with him, and that he was somebody that I connected with. I didn't know him by any stretch of the imagination, and I certainly wouldn't pretend for a second to be on the same kind of, circles that he ran in. But one of the things that's funny about Anthony Bourdain is that when his book first came out, Kitchen Confidential, I was executive chef at the Pot au Feu restaurant in Providence, and I refused to read it because I had heard a lot about it, and a lot of what had happened was there was a sort of a light shine underneath the carpet of the restaurant world, and everybody now all of a sudden thought that, oh my God, everybody is spitting in food, and it's this is horrible, and this is what goes on in the kitchen, and blah blah blah. So I kind of resented that for a long time, and I said, this guy is making it seem like we're all a bunch of hacks in the kitchen, and I did not give it its due course, and I did not read the book. But about 5 years later, I guess probably 5 or 6 years later, I finally sat down and read it, and it's wonderful. It was just a great, right? And he said oftentimes in the book, which your customers don't pass on to you, but he said oftentimes in the book that this was not the life of everyone in all the kitchens, and he talked about several kitchens that were really truly professional, which is what I was very and still am very proud of my kitchens and the people who work for me. As a professional organization. It's not the sort of back of the house that was portrayed a lot in the book. But then once I read the books, I started really following his career and watching what he was doing. And when you as a professional chef, everybody asks me, "Do you watch the cooking shows?" And my answer is, well, if you sell real estate, would you sit down and watch a real estate show on the weekends? No, of course not, right? But I don't really get into those shows because it's nothing for me that I enjoy about them, and that's just me personally. But what I did get very excited about seeing a new one of Anthony's shows. I really enjoyed watching the shows because I think that he touched professional chefs. I mean, he was talking to people, not only home cooks, but people who were truly professional chefs. The things that were interesting to us, and it's a terrible loss that he's gone. But I think hopefully somebody else will be in that genre of culinary world that will come in and do that, and keep that part of it alive. I think that so much of what's on TV today is sensationalized. It's a game show mentality,
right.
And to me that's not what it's about. I loved watching Julia Child, and it was a guy, Jeff Smith, that used to be on TV that I learned a lot from when I was first getting into this business. And Jacques Pepin, I love watching him. The people where I can actually watch something and learn, I love to watch. And Bourdain was one of those people, and he did it in a great and entertaining way. And his approach to everything seemed to be just right on cue with how anybody who was in this business would want to be.
No, I appreciate that. Again, we're talking with Chef Sean Dutson of the Rebels Guild. I want to talk a little bit about Rebels Guild because you talked about all the details that you were involved in, and I wanted to talk a little bit about how did you develop your team in the kitchen. If I asked them what about you inspires them, what would they say? And let's start with that, because then I want to talk about the menu and your wine list and all of that.
I think that it's hard to say. You can't judge yourself, right? So it's hard to say what anybody might say about the way that I inspire my team. My team is a group of folks that I took some of the folks that I had in the banquet kitchen here at the hotel that had a passion for the food that we were doing and moved them over. And then I also brought some new folks in. And what I tell people, what my team is, what my mantra is, it's repeated, is that we need to respect the food. We need to handle the food in a way that it allows it to become what it should be, what Mother Nature did for it. So if it's a tomato, it needs to be ripe and it needs to be just slightly salted, and it needs to be handled so that it's something that tastes like a tomato. I don't want it to taste like garlic. I want it to taste like a tomato. Sure. So the menu at Rebels Guild is very simple. It's a very simple menu. There's not a lot of complexity to it. So the more simple you get, the more precise you need to be, and the more accurate, and the more consistent it needs to be. We do a skillet cornbread here that is as simple a recipe as you can make. It's very, very simple, very light, very delicious. But if you go a quarter of a teaspoon off here, a quarter teaspoon off there, it doesn't come out right. And there are nights where I send it all back and say, you need to start over with the batter, because I can tell no matter what you're going to do to this, it's not going to be right because the batter isn't right. And if it's not right, it doesn't go out. And that's I think my team has gotten that from me, and that's what they know, and they've learned that. The first few weeks of that is tedious. You get to the point where you keep sending stuff back and saying no, this doesn't happen. And we go back to tasting everything. Everything gets tasted before it goes out. Everything has been, you need to make sure that the first one you do in the night tastes like the last one you do at night, and there's no room for error. So that kind of simple precision, I think is what is probably my hallmark with my team.
You've also have your own wine list at Rebels Guild. Tell our listeners, pardon me, about how you approach the pairing of the wines with the food, or I think you also have a unique selection of beers that you can't really find anywhere else. How have you done that, and what would you like to share with the audience?
Well, one of the things that I have been the general manager and the front of the house manager of various restaurants, and I've also, so I've run both the front of the house and the back of the house. And when I first got into, actually before I even started cooking, I was really getting into wines a lot, and with some friends of mine, and it was something that I was very interested in. And then when I started cooking, that became part of my day-to-day, and then even more so when I started being the general manager and director of restaurants, where I was out front and in charge of purchasing wines and shopping for wines, things like that. But my approach to wines is exactly the same as it is food, and that's why a lot of people say, well, you're the chef, why did you do the wine list? Well, I did the wine list because it's, to me, they're one and the same. There's no better person in the world to be picking your wine list for your menu than your chef, because wine is food, right? It's when I used to teach wine pairing classes, and I would teach the class, and I would say, okay, well, what is it about this wine that's intimidating to you? How is this different than if I said to you, do blueberries go with duck, for example? So we have a dish on the menu that has it's smoked duck with a blueberry compote, and almost anybody who's ever eaten any of that stuff would say, oh, certainly those go together. But if you take wine and add it to it, people, oh, I don't know which wine would go with that. I don't know. But if you take the wine and you say the wine has characteristics of a blueberry, it's rich, it's jammy, it's got that sort of fruit forward taste. But that's an easy way to say, okay, well, that wine pairs well with the duck. If you substitute what you get for flavors when you're tasting the wine, if flavors come to mind in particular things that register with the individual, because each person's different and each person will have a different palate for it. But almost always we associate the flavors that we get in wine with a type of food or another food. That's the immediate draw. And if you take that particular food that you've drawn to and you try to bring it to your recollection to what foods go with it, that's the easiest way to pair wine.
Great. Don, I have so many more questions, and I want to continue to ask him questions regards his restaurant and his approach to menu planning and sustainable practices. But did you have a question for Chef Sean?
Well, I do. We're talking with Sean Dutson. He's a terrific chef who, from listening to him, is really unusual. He anchors his efforts in hotels, which I find fascinating. Usually, hotel food is at best standard, and he's certainly made a career out of making it outstanding. Thank you, Sean. As a traveler,
thanks for that compliment. That's great. Yeah.
No, you have no idea how many bland meals I've had in hotels, simply because I was too tired to go out. But anyway, the question I have is, as a home cook, to me the toughest problem is making the same meal twice, so it tastes the same. What is the secret of doing it?
The secret of doing that. So my wife, who's a wonderful, wonderful person, cooks from recipes all the time. And I think it annoys her a bit because when I come home and I watch her cooking from a recipe, I want to pull my hair out. I can't. And I say, come on, you got to learn to taste this stuff. Don't worry about what it says on the piece of paper. Taste it, because if you buy an avocado one day, it's going to taste a little different than the avocado you bought the next day because it's slightly different ripeness. It's tasting and truthfully constantly tasting throughout the process of making the meal and knowing what flavors you're looking for at that particular stage in its cooking. I used to one of the things that I remember when I first came home, my wife, I was making a flan, and it was a similar, just a vegetable flan where I put things into it, but it was an egg batter, and it was something that as a home cook you would never think to taste because it's egg, it's raw egg and it's got stuff in it. It's not even close to being cooked, but I would tell her, and I still tell my guys the same thing, you got to taste that egg before it goes into the oven, because if it's not seasoned properly at that stage, it's not going to get any better when you cook it. It's got to be, you've got to taste it along the way, so you should know what things taste like. And truthfully, at home, it's repetition of the same thing. Find 4 or 5 things that you like, that you make, and really get to know them and get to know where the flavors are. And at the end of the day, with anybody and any food, it's what you like. We tend to overcomplicate things, and I know that from experience with my friends and family and everything, when we're cooking at home, it's like, oh, well, we put this in it, we put that in it, because we're all looking for that secret ingredient. And truthfully, it's the place that you need to be focused on is when you go to the market and when you're buying product. buy a product that's ripe. Buy a product that's been handled properly. Make sure the cut of meat is a good cut of meat, and understand the basic product. And then when you get it home and you're working with it, you're working with it with something that you have a good shot at getting to be tasting good by not doing much to it.
All I know is your wife must be the bravest person if she can cook for a chef.
Yeah, she would say that. She would probably say the opposite. She hates when I walk in the house because I'm such a taskmaster, and she's like, "Don't watch me. Just get out of the kitchen. Don't watch me."
I often wonder about that. My father was a great cook, and he cooked at the World's Fair of 1939. And
wow.
My mother used to say what a great cook he was. But she hated the fact that he put the heads of fish into the thing, and my father kept telling her the head is where the taste came from.
Yeah,
but
that's where the flavor
she enjoyed
is.
the taste, but not how it was done. But,
right.
But
right.
But anyway, thank you, and back to you, Ann. We have about 5 minutes.
Okay, great. I wanted to talk a little bit, Chef, about your sustainable practices and how do you go about minimizing waste in the restaurant? Because I'm sure that's a big piece of the cost structure.
Yeah, they're similar, they're related, but they're not completely the same thing. For me, minimizing waste, I learned that from the get-go with Paul when I was working in the French restaurant when I first started in this, because the classic mentality of the traditional French chef was that of economy, an economy of product and not wasting anything. A large part of what is modern cuisine is figuring out ways to make things that wouldn't normally be all that great on their own to taste good, So a really skilled chef figures out a way to use the ends of the asparagus instead of throwing them in the trash can. Or, what do you do with the bones? How do we make what do we do with the marrow that's in a bone? That utilizing products to a point where you've exhausted all of their possible uses is one thing that I do, and I've been around a long time, so I've been doing this long enough that I know that when I write a menu for my banquet menu, the products that make up that menu need to be the same products that I use in the restaurant and I use in room service and all the aspects of the hotel. So the more I can cross-utilize products and have more, creative, inventive ways of dealing with each one of them, various parts of whatever fish, if I'm going to use the head of the fish, for example, as you gave me there, Don, I know that I can make a stock out of that, and I'm going to use that stock in the restaurant. Yeah, but it's a byproduct of something I did for an event, for a banquet event. That kind of mentality saves me an enormous amount of money, and it saves me a lot of waste. As far as the sustainability part of it, that is something that I think that we all, as responsible folks in the world, citizens of the world, are needing to be we need to look at now. And what I do with it in this environment is I weave the sustainable, organic, and local products into my overall menus. I lean on them heavily for the restaurant, and I do use quite a bit of that type of product for banquets where I can manage it from a cost perspective. Because as you know, organic or sustainable or local products oftentimes are more expensive, and we need to work within budgets and we need to work within the customer's needs that way. But when the option presents itself, we certainly lean in that direction whenever possible.
Okay. Absolutely.
Well, we've been talking with Sean Dutson. He's a celebrity chef who anchors himself in hotels, which is unusual, but he's proven it to be a success. A link to his website will be on foodandwineinsider.com tonight. You can hear this and every other Food and Wine Insider program on that website, and you can also tell us via a short survey how we can better serve you and suggest future guests.
To be successful, most restaurant owners require extra capital from time to time. When you need funding to renovate, buy equipment, or manage cash flow, you don't have time to track down financial statements or wait weeks for a decision. That's where Kabbage can help. Kabbage gives small businesses access to a line of credit of up to $200,000. Apply online and you'll get a decision right away. Since Kabbage is a line of credit, you can take the exact amount you need. You never have to reapply to take additional loans, and you'll only pay for the funds you use. Kabbage has helped more than 230,000 businesses from every industry, and with $4 billion in funding, Kabbage is A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau and was named the Forbes Top 100 Companies twice in a row. Check out Kabbage at kabbagewithak.com/food and wine, and you'll get a $50 gift card when you qualify. That's kabbage.com/food-and-wine.
Line of credit is subject to credit approval. See terms and conditions. All Kabbage business loans are issued by Celtic Bank, a Utah-chartered industrial bank, member FDIC.
And we take cork in the bottle and other places for granted. Here to tell us a little bit more about cork is Peter Weber. He's Executive Director of the Cork Quality Council. Peter, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you, Don. It's a pleasure.
Well, it's all our pleasure. Because we have so much to talk about cork, I'm going to turn you immediately over to Ann.
Thank you, Don. And Peter, welcome. Today's segment is, we're talking about wine, but in a very different kind of way. It's specifically how wine is closed. I think many of us sort of assume that cork closures are better, but do we know why? We probably don't even know how cork is harvested. Does it harm the trees? Should we feel good about wine, not just because of the taste, but because of the environmental impact? So we've invited Peter, who's the Executive Director of the Cork Quality Council, to talk to us today. And a little bit on the council itself. It's a non-for-profit organization. It was founded in 1993 to promote the education and improve quality assurance performance for the wine and cork industries. So, Peter, let's start a little bit with some stats, maybe. How much of the world's wine bottles are actually closed with natural cork, and do we know? And how much in the U.S. market specifically?
Well, and I think most estimates for the worldwide number is 70% of the wine bottles are closed with cork. In this country, I track the top 100 brands, and it's currently at about 63% bottled in cork. But frankly, since the top 100 brands include most of the big brands that use synthetic corks, I wouldn't be surprised if the overall number was closer to the 70% in this country as well.
Wow. I think we've seen over the last several years that cork, or natural cork, is losing market share to synthetic closures and, screw caps. Any sense of why that was happening, and what have cork producers done to sort of change that shift?
Well, that's a good question. There are several reasons why cork was declining back 15 years ago or 10 years ago. One very important reason was the cost, and I think that a second reason was that the synthetic closures came on to take top position with among alternatives, mostly because it was very not being a natural product. It was a bit more consistent, and the big wineries could use their bottling lines at a much faster rate, and I think that made the production people very much happy, and the lower cost made the accountants very happy. There was a lot of talk about quality issues in terms of there's obviously no kind of cork taint issue with a synthetic product, but there are other reasons why natural cork is preferred. So that's where we were 10, 15 years ago, and what the cork industry has done is it's virtually, we haven't quite eliminated TCA, which is the chemical causing cork taint, but we've got it down to the level where most winemakers don't consider it to be a serious problem anymore. We also have new cork products that are also very consistent and lower cost. And I think people have also been able to see that consumers like cork, they prefer cork, and I think there's been more of a period of comparison. So I think the winemakers are often much happier to be using a cork product. So we've seen since in the past 8 years, I guess, we've seen cork closers increase 48% for these top 100 brands in the country, and the alternatives have declined by 10%. So it's been kind of a turnaround, and we're very happy about it.
Yes, absolutely. Maybe we could talk a little bit about the process itself. How is cork harvested? I think it's peeled from a tree. I think people would probably be concerned that affects the tree. Can you talk a little bit about the process itself for harvesting cork?
Sure, Ann. The cork tree is an oak tree. It's a different species. It's called Quercus suber, and it's got a very thick bark. And unlike most trees, in the summertime, it can get a little loose on the tree. It's basically to protect the tree from drought conditions and the potential of fire. So you end up with this really thick bark that's got the traditional spongy cork that people have been using for centuries. And what they do is they basically make a incision and start peeling the cork off. They generally do this every 9 years, though in some drier climates it might be every 10 years. The reason why they wait 9 or 10 years is because that's how long it takes for the cork to become thick enough to punch out a wine cork. And that wine cork is about 1 inch wide, so they need the bark to be about 1 1/4 inch, 1.5 inches in thickness, because they've got to punch these little corks right out of the wood. And it's important. The trees are never injured. They might be if I was doing it, but these people know what they're doing, and cork trees are very valuable. That's one of the reasons why the government and the United Nations people are all trying to protect the cork industry, because it keeps a business going in the forest and keeps an ecosystem alive. But anyway, once you peel the bark off, you basically boil that wood, and that makes the cork cells expand a little bit. It makes the wood very pliable. They age the cork for a little bit, and then they punch out the corks with these kind of circular knives. They go very fast. It's quite a beautiful product. Nothing's wasted. The cork that doesn't make it into the actual wine cork itself is ground up and used for tiles or gaskets, or in some cases even some of the dust is used to fire up the generators that create some of the power for the factory. So it's a nice sustainable process.
So it has a whole life cycle going with it, from from harvesting it to obviously energy creation and other products. So nothing is wasted, which sounds really fabulous. And I think I read somewhere that the way the process is managed, it can extend the tree's life from 70 years to 250 years, which is pretty amazing. So why don't we talk a little bit about why, since we're talking about something that people like to drink, why is wine closed with natural cork better for the environment? And then I think you started to touch on the whole concept of the cork forest actually preventing sort of the expansion of deserts, which we're seeing a lot of in lots of the deforestation is creating these massive deserts in which you can't really grow anything. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Well, sure. I think the role of the cork forest again in fighting deforestation is probably most dramatic in North Africa. These are not the largest cork forests in the Mediterranean, but they're probably the most important because they are kind of like a single line holding back the desert from going all the way to the Mediterranean Sea. So through Morocco and Algeria, Tunisia, there's a kind of a thin line of cork forest that anchors the coastline from the ever-increasing sand. And it's considered to be very, very valuable, and it's considered by the World Wildlife Fund to be one of the most important forests in the world. And one of the importance of the cork industry in keeping these cork trees there is because it actually creates an incentive for people to not remove those trees and put in some cash crop, because indeed the cork tree is a cash crop, and just like shearing sheep, it's there year after year. And when you drive through these cork forests, you'll see a number painted on each cork tree, and that number signifies what year it's going to be harvested next. So it's kind of interesting. You can kind of get a feel for, which tree is 3 years away, which tree is going to be, harvested in June.
I don't think folks know. In fact, I'm not sure I know. So where are the majority of these cork oak forests?
Well, it's kind of contiguous in that it basically stretches around the Western Mediterranean. The largest cork forest is in Portugal, the second largest is in Spain, the third largest in Morocco, so it's kind of circling the Mediterranean Sea. All in all, we're talking about something over 5 million acres, which is about the size of New Jersey, and it's pretty much dispersed around there. The interesting thing is the cork tree is a very healthy oak tree. They grow beautifully in many parts of the world. They grow here in California, where I am. It's a tremendous decorative tree as well. I say decorative because we don't have anybody out here who knows how to harvest them, but they have nice thick bark, just like they would have in the Mediterranean regions.
So as we think about tasting wine, does wine closed with cork taste better, and if so, why?
Well, I think it does. People do. Generally, would forget the market research, but people generally prefer the wines with cork, and I personally feel that it's due to two things, and primarily it's oxygen management. When you taste a wine with a screw cap, and you taste a wine with a cork, most people will say that the cork wine has more developed flavors, more richness, more character, more levels, and those are fairly important comparison points. And I think that comes because the different tannins and polyphenols in the wine have matured differently, and that's because the action of oxygen in a cork is different than it is in other vehicles. I would say that you hear the story that cork breathes, and it really doesn't. What it does is when you compress that cork, there's about 3 milliliters of oxygen in there, and when you squeeze that cork to make it fit in the bottle, that oxygen is now under pressure, and it's going to very slowly make its way through the tiny little cork cells into the wine. So it's a very small dose of oxygen. It's probably maybe a milliliter or two. That takes about 6 to 8 months to get into the wine, and then that's it. There's no more oxygen. So you get a little dose of oxygen, but you don't get too much. Some of the alternative closures, well, actually all the alternative closures, they don't have that ability to diffuse oxygen. They can be permeated. You can, when they sell screw caps now, they put in a special liner that allows in a certain amount of oxygen. But whatever that amount is, it's going to be coming every month. So at some point you'll have the right amount of oxygen, but that depends on when you drink it, and it depends on what kind of liner they put in. And some of the synthetic closures tend to let oxygen permeate through the plastic, and that means that sometime 18, 19, 20 months you're probably going to be looking at a potentially oxidative situation. So the way the cork lets the oxygen in with like a small dose and then stop, I think it really allows the wine to develop more, and it doesn't get it doesn't have some of the problems that you might get with some of the alternatives.
Does it contribute to that sound of the cork popping? Because obviously you don't get pop when you're opening it with a screw top or an artificial, but does it contribute to the sound of popping? Because it sounds like even though there's this little pressure of oxygen, that it has that effect.
Well, I never really studied where the popping sound came from. I have seen a psychology study which showed that measured how much more people appreciated wine when they were playing the sound of a popping cork versus the sound of unscrewing screw cap. And it was a significant difference. Same wine, different noise. So obviously that cork popping sound is appealing to most people, most wine consumers. Certainly, the champagne popping sound is a tremendous signal for people to look to celebrate.
Right, absolutely. Don, I wanted to see if you had any questions, because I'm so fascinated by this subject. I keep asking questions. Is there a burning question in your mind?
Yes, I agree with you. I'm sitting here listening to it, and I'm fascinated. But I'm going to go in different directions and ask this. Peter, how did you get involved in this, and what's a little bit of your background?
Well, Don, I guess I started the wine business in 1979, a long time ago. Moved there from the East Coast and started selling wine, and worked for a winery that's probably been purchased 2 or 3 times since then, and kind of got involved with mostly marketing and sales. So I guess I kind of ended up getting a sort of a reputation for being a numbers cruncher, I guess. And when the Cork Quality Council was looking for somebody to institute some new testing methods, somebody recommended me, and I've been doing this since 1998. And the first thing I worked on was basically figuring out better ways to reduce the incidence of cork taint, and we've been pretty successful with that. This is, I still do a little bit of work with wineries, but primarily the cork business is my main love right now.
Well, the connoisseurs, when they pop a wine bottle, they smell the cork, which is again something you can't do with a screw tap. But I know very little bit about wine. My mother was the original prohibitionist. But what are they looking for in smelling that cork?
Well, there's a lot of debate about that. I personally look at the cork myself. I'm more concerned with its physical appearance. Of course, being in the cork business, I'm probably just curious what the cork looks like. But some people are smelling the cork to see if there are any off aromas. Personally, I think most people are looking at to kind of get a gauge as to whether or not the cork is still wet and that they've got a good seal. It almost always is. And, a lot of people, I think, do that because that's what they do in the movies.
That's a great answer. I'm going to do one more.
That's a great answer.
I happen to have a bottle of Anisette that my father bought before World War II. that has a cork cover. I know. That tells you how much we have of liquor in our house. And in preparation for this show, I went to the bottle and opened it. Again, the cork came out. The cork, by the way, is the original cork and is still not dry. And it has kept that anisette still relatively. We've lost some, but since World War II, it is not evaporated totally. I was just amazed. This program encouraged me to go and look at it because I was told that it does help.
Oh yeah. Well, there's currently kind of a debate going on right now where some people are saying that you don't even have to put the wine bottle on the side, that the natural humidity of the inside of a wine bottle is enough to keep the bottle, the cork, humidified, so you don't have a problem with it drying out. And I find that interesting because I think for years we've all been told to store the wine bottles on this other side.
I'm going to turn it back to you, Ann, because this again is a fascinating conversation.
No, thank you, Don. I'm going to reverse to talk a little bit about recycling of cork, and I wanted to know a little bit about what the Cork Quality Council does, if it can do anything about recycling cork. You know, a lot of people save their cork, you know, after they take them out of their wine bottles and they have them sitting around in a glass bowl or whatever. How should consumers sort of recycle that cork, and where can it go?
Well, we work with two different companies who have a really large-scale cork recycling, and one of them has baskets in every Whole Foods store in the country. And I think that's got a pretty good distribution. And between the two of them, these guys are excuse me, they have collected over 200 million corks, and different ones work with shoe companies that make inner soles. They make yoga blocks. They make tiles. So, there's a lot of uses for ground up cork. In fact, the people who are selling cork flooring are doing very well, because it's such obviously a very sound product, and it's got great insulation. It's great on your feet and all that, and it looks beautiful.
Fantastic. How do I know if before I buy a bottle of wine that I'm buying one that's closed with natural cork?
That's an issue we talk about, and it's hard. I mean, obviously you can tell a screw cap, and whether or not it's a plastic plug inside or a natural cork, sometimes it's hard to tell. I see a fair amount of wineries are using that short foil so you can actually see the bottom of the cork, which I always thought was an elegant way of letting the consumer know how the wine's being treated. And we have worked with different wineries that try to get them to make that obvious to the consumer, because our consumers, they want to know what kind of closure they're getting. It's important. It's interesting. I've read a couple reports of retailers who've had very good increases in sales when they put out a shelf talker saying that this wine's been finished with cork, and we're going to see a bit more of that next year as well. So I don't see. It's hard to get a winemaker to give up space on their label, but we would like very much to have people know if they're getting a cork inside or not. And I think most consumers would like to have that information.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think there's they'd be good if there was more transparency in the labeling, but there's not a lot of space on a bottle. But I would think that any winemaker would want to highlight that they're using natural cork, as that it seems to have clearly a signal to the consumer about quality. So I think there's certainly opportunity. So what's next for the Cork Quality Council? What are you trying to achieve as a council, as a non-for-profit? What would you like? What's your vision of almost success with the council?
Well, what we're trying to do, we have I guess two main goals. One is, when I first started, I said, what do you want me to do from an educational standpoint? And the group unanimously said, please convince Americans that we don't cut down the tree. And I said, really? And sure enough, 90% of the people I spoke to assumed that we were cutting down the cork trees to make cork. So one of the things that our goal is still to try to make sure everyone knows that the cork is a sustainable product. It's a renewable product, and it's a recyclable product. In fact, it's really considered one of the most sustainable industries around, mostly because of the combination of renewable work in the harvest, which is considered so important for keeping the desert at bay, and also from a carbon footprint standpoint. The second thing we try to do at the Cork Quality Council is, like the name implies, we try to work on quality. And the first thing we were working on was eliminating TCA. It's almost there, but in some ways, I spend a lot of my time still. We have 35,000 individual tests for TCA, and all the corks we bring in before we accept them into our warehouses, which I still go through all those records, and we keep lowering the amount of, I should say, we keep lowering the numbers, but what we're really doing is raising the standards to the point where we have reduced the amount of TCA in coming into the United States by 94% since we started testing this way. So it's
Peter,
pretty
could
successful.
you? I don't think our listeners know what TCA is. Could you just say what that
sure.
is?
Well, I apologize. People have heard the term cork taint, and some people consider cork taint to be anything that makes them unhappy with their wine. But the truth is, it's a very specific aroma. It comes from a very specific chemical. The chemical, the acronym is TCA, stands for trichloroanisole. TCA is nothing unique to corks. I smell it whenever I go to the store in apples, carrots, raisins. It's basically something that happens when chlorine gets in contact with phenols and activated by any kind of microorganism. So basically it smells like wet newspaper, because wet newspapers have TCA, just like some apples, some raisins, and sometimes some corks. One of the problems about TCA in wine is that people don't, one of the best way to release TCA to your nose is to use a 15% ethanol mixture, which is basically wine. And so we have like a perfect laboratory. If there's any TCA in the cork at all, there's no better way to release it than put it into a wine solution and hold it up to your nose and smell. So obviously we're very sensitive to this this chemical, and we can detect, parts. Some people can detect 2 parts per trillion, which is a ridiculously small amount.
Peter, so I have to jump in here because unfortunately I could speak with you for hours, but I think we've run out of time, and I wanted to be sure that Dawn expressed your website and how to contact you, and so I'm going to turn it to you, Dawn, to bring us to a close.
Thank you.
It's unfortunate. It's been fascinating. We've been talking with Peter Weber. He's executive director of the Cork Quality Council. A link to his website will be on foodandwineinsider.com tonight, where you can hear this and every other Food and Wine program, and also take a short survey about the program and tell us what you would like to hear on future programs. Peter, thank you so much for being with us. It's been an extremely informative time.
You've been listening to Food and Wine Insider with Ann Daw and Don Mazzella. Contact us at foodandwineinsider.com. Food and Wine Insider.